Okay, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. It's the weekly Colorado Department of Labor and Employment press briefing. This morning we have some exciting news to announce with some other agency partners. So today's call will be specifically focusing around our announcement. We'll take your questions at the end. There will be a follow-up press release distributed this morning summarizing today's announcement. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Joe Barella, Executive Director for the Department of Labor and Employment. Joe?
Oh, you're
muted, Joe. You're muted, Joe. There you go.
That's better. Thank you, Cher. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I think we want to start off this morning talking about unemployment insurance fraud. Since the middle of summer of last year, it has been a national issue, and Colorado has been at the forefront of detecting fraud early and proactively putting triggers in place to stop fraudulent payments from going out. In 2019, pre-pandemic, CDLE had just under 90 fraud cases. That's 90. In 2020, we know that there were about 800,000 suspected fraud claims in Colorado, and that's 800,000. Despite the historic spike in fraud since the start of the pandemic, we flagged more than 1.1 million fraudulent claims. And so that is saying in the system, we have had more fraudulent claims filed in Colorado than we've actually paid out legitimate claims. Assuming that these 1.1 million fraudulent claims paid out for their life cycle, we estimate that we prevented about $7.5 billion in fraudulent benefits going out. I do want to mention a recent inaccurate AP story that was published earlier this week reported that Colorado had paid $6.5 billion in fraudulent claims. This has been retracted and corrected with the correct amount, which is 6.5 million, and that's 6.5 million with an M as of January 1st of this year. I need to also report that of that 6.5 million, Colorado has been successful in recapturing nearly $1 million with the cooperation of our financial institutions, the Department of Treasury, and the Secret Service Division. CDLE has done a number of things to address and prevent frauds. We implemented an identification verification tool this year called ID.me that utilizes software to identify fraud. We also continue to research and, when appropriate, procure new security features. Before the introduction of the CARES Act this year, we had less than 5 triggers. Today, we have more than 50 triggers in place that could potentially prevent fraudulent claims from being filed and processed. We've contracted with Deloitte to manage our fraud analytics. This team is responsible for creating our fraud detection scheme and works nightly to look at how the system is being utilized and how we can prevent fraudulent claims from being paid out. We tripled the size of our criminal investigation team with another set of hiring happening right now. We are contracting with external vendor for additional investigators, and we are holding town halls for business communities and claimants to address their concerns and how best to deal with the identity theft that is happening in the system. Our top priority is to identify the fraud, prevent it, and release benefits owed to the legitimate claimants in Colorado. We strongly encourage UI fraud victims and employers that are expecting or experience UI fraud or suspect UI fraud to please use coloradoui.gov and report fraud. This is the best and the fastest way that we can help you with your identity theft issue and also prevent payments from going out the door. We have a lot of people trying to access our call center to report fraud, and we really want to advise you that the best and fastest way to do that is go to coloradoui.gov and fill out the fraud form. That is my update on UI fraud. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Attorney General Phil Weiser, who is going to work with us and make an announcement today. Attorney General.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Joe. Thanks for your hard work and leadership. I often remark that here in Colorado, our work, our democracy, our government, it's a team sport. We're all in this work together. Part of what this pandemic has called on us is to raise our collaboration game even more. There has been a lot of efforts to prey on consumers. We've seen efforts to push fake cures. We're now hearing about fake vaccines being pushed. We've dealt with people who have been deceptive sellers of PPE. And starting this fall, as Joe mentioned, at rates we've never seen before, this unemployment insurance scam, it's staggering. As Joe mentioned, over 1 million false claims. What this is telling us is something that many of us knew before. The risk of identity theft is severe and can touch any of us. There's information that all of us put into databases or our own computers that has now been accessed by third parties, malevolent actors who want to use it against us, such as by filing these claims. We've worked with our partners at CDLE to get the word out. If you are the victim of such an effort, what this means is your identity is compromised. And we want you to protect your identity. That's why we developed an identity theft repair kit. You can access it and other critical information about scams at stopfraudcolorado.gov. It's not enough to help people after the fact, even before the fact, vigilantly guarding information. We need to go after these scammers. This activity is criminal, it's reprehensible, and we are going to do all we can to find people who are participating in it and bring them to justice. To do this requires a team. And my announcement today is we have put together with all the relevant agencies in Colorado a task force. This task force will, of course, include our partners at the Department of Labor and Employment who have stepped up to hire more investigators to look who's behind this. We have partners at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation who are similarly making this a top priority. And then, of course, our district attorney partners represented here by my friend Alexis King, who I'll introduce in a minute, have also come to the table. The entire Colorado District Attorneys Council has embraced this initiative because it's not just in one county or jurisdiction. This is happening across our whole state. And finally, if we get matters that are multi-state or international, we will refer them to the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Department of Justice, who's agreed to consider such matters that we may find. The goal here, of course, is to let scammers know that what they're doing is wrong and has consequences. And if we can find people, say someone picking up unemployment insurance benefits that don't belong to them as part of whether it's an organized criminal activity, whether it's a one-off activity, we will get to the bottom of it and we'll work to bring people to justice. Preying on people during a pandemic, it's atrocious. And we don't want to allow these scammers to get away with it, which means we also need help from the public. If you can share with us your information, as Joe just asked, we're going to be able to then not only help protect you, but work on bringing to justice people who've engaged in this wrongful conduct. We can't do this alone with the Attorney General's office. We are able to help coordinate as part of what is a team effort. And we've got a number of district attorneys involved, including the newly elected district attorney from Jefferson County, Alexis King, who is a tremendous public servant, and we're so honored to have her. Let me turn the floor to her to share a few words before we get to questions.
Thanks so much, Phil, for the introduction. I'm really honored to stand here today with Attorney General Weiser, as well as our other state partners, and launch this statewide task force. For many years, our office worked to educate our community about identity theft and fraud because the impact of these crimes can impede basic life tasks for years to come. Before the pandemic, we would meet community members in churches and in schools and community groups to spread the word about how to avoid victimization. Because identity theft means that you could lose your credit score that you've been working hard to raise. Identity theft means that you could have regular Social Security money that just suddenly stops. And it also means that years later, when your kids apply for student loans, there's extra paperwork involved. Forms get complicated, customer service takes longer, everything gets harder. Identity theft presents real long-term consequences for folks that all of us probably take for granted. So they can spend years trying to protect their name and their finances. You take those basic issues that these crimes impacted before a global pandemic and add the hardship that COVID-19 has presented and it really becomes untenable. We know that people are struggling to make ends meet, and they're reaching out for help. We need to make sure that our unemployment resources are flowing to those who need them, not to those who fraudulently abuse our safety nets. So today we announce a strong state and local partnership to target these bad actors. And by joining with the Attorney General and his Special Prosecution Unit, district attorneys across the state can be sure that cases against those committing these fraudulent acts can be developed and prosecuted. So thank you so much, Attorney General Weiser and the Colorado Department of Labor in making this possible.
I think we're now open to questions. Is that right?
Sherry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. We have a question here from Charles Ashby. His question is there any evidence or investigation into whether CDLE's own computers were hacked? And I'm happy to take that or turn it over to Director Barella. Absolutely not. There's no evidence whatsoever, as we've reported many times over the last few months. This is fraudulent activity due to stolen identities, not a breach in CDLE systems. Other questions? Has anyone been arrested or charged in Colorado for defrauding the state's unemployment system during the pandemic yet?
I'm happy to take that one. We have not had any such actions that we can announce at this point. We are looking at whatever leads we can get. And as soon as we have such cases that we're at a position to report on, we'll do that. This is an important priority. That's why we're setting up this task force. We're going to work hard to see what leads we can develop and where they go.
Other questions? Can you discuss the international aspects of this crime?
I can at a high level. And the problem here, I think it was all those questions, is when information about all of us is accessed and then available for often organized crime at the international level to be used strategically, it's not always easy to track. We've seen this play out in a number of contexts. This one, obviously, at a level that is unique. We don't have enough visibility into who, where, and what exactly is driving all this, but I think I would have to agree with the premise of the question that it is likely there can and are international actors at work here. The point I would emphasize, because of the way these funds are distributed, there, I believe, will be a local point of presence that would be necessary to access the funds. And to the extent that is true, Joe's nodding his head, that provides a local nexus for our work. And so even if there are international actors behind it, I do believe there are going to be local, again, participants who we can go after. And if we can find a way to trace back as far as possible, we'll look to do that. We just had a recent drug bust that we did that was a network that was substantial, over 60 individuals, and we did go over a period of time to get to the top. So it may take longer to do that, but we want to be as thorough as we can in our work.
Sure, I'll take Tamara's question. The 800,000 was for the calendar year 2020, Tamara. The 1.1 million, we are in the third month of 2021. So we have had fraudulent claims starting January 1st through today, March 4th. That's the difference in that number. Hopefully that's clear. And to Liz's question in regards to CDLE had mentioned some people filed multiple claims and were so bold as to contact legislators when they didn't get paid. Can you talk about this? I think we announced that probably a couple of weeks ago that with the new MyUI Plus system, we're able to identify IP addresses from where claims are being filed. And we do have on record where we had someone contact their state legislator and complain that we were holding up their payment, they weren't getting paid. And from that same IP address, we identified 20 different claims being filed within 1 hour. And so, of course, we're holding that in an integrity fraud hold, but These are brazen criminals that are trying to take advantage of the situation and get money paid into accounts that are fraudulent. And so, yes, we've had news stories in the newsprint that are taking stories of individuals who aren't getting paid and delayed that are actually not telling the truth. And so they are very brazen in how they want money released from the system. So I think if you need more information on that, hopefully the work that we're doing with the Attorney General's and his staff will have some cases to move forward in the next couple months.
Joe. Blair Miller, I think the Attorney General addressed your question previously. Certainly, we've reported that when we deployed our new MyUI Plus system in early January, within an hour of deployment, we saw international activity with IP addresses trying to enter the system. And fortunately, MyUI Plus is doing a great job applying those fraud indicators that we had in the PUA system now to regular UI. And so our hope is that with a combination of the ID.me identity verification tool and the MyUI Plus fraud triggers, we're doing even a better job in stopping that activity before it even becomes a fraudulent claim.
Chair, can I answer Liz's question?
Sure, please.
It's a really important question, Liz. Thanks for asking it. A lot of people are assuming because this is in connection with the unemployment insurance scam that maybe the data was compromised from the Department of Labor and Employment. And what I want to do is underscore something that we've known for a long time. Lots and lots of data about all of us that is personal to us and that can be used against us is already in the hands of people who will use it in dangerous ways. The Equifax data breach had an extraordinary amount of data about each of us that, again, is ripe for misuse. It is not clear exactly who got that data and what they would be doing with it. And that's only one example. You can go down a list of data breaches. Many of us know how our data has been accessed. For example, if I worked in the federal government and there was a breach of the federal personnel files, I know that data is out there. But whether you know it or not, the chances are really high that data that matters to you is out there. And so when people talk about things like be smart about your passwords, that's in part because if you use the same password for every single site and sensitive sites, chances are that password has been compromised. And you are better off being careful about your password and using two-factor authentication. You're trying not to share your social security number. That's a smart practice. Don't share it. There's a risk it's already out there. And so what happened is this data is out there. It then gets used in this way. And I know that is baffling to people. This is a moment where people can learn about how identity theft works, why it matters, and what they can do to protect themselves.
So much. I think Phil Spessart, can you take the follow-up question from Charles Ashby?
Yeah, Charles, where you're asking here at your paper and no elsewhere, employers continue to get notified of workers who aren't unemployed, still getting claims made in their names, and those employers telling CDLE they aren't unemployed, but continue to get a UI card. So if you recall from last week or the last several weeks in press conferences, Charles, we have discussed how the system is set up. So individuals file these fraudulent unemployment claims, which causes processes to kick off, one of which is a file that goes to US Bank to create that Relia card and is sent to parties. Another one is a file that will send a questionnaire to the employer. This is when the employer is becoming aware of the claim being filed, asking why the individual is not working for them anymore. This is also why we've asked those employers to go online at this point in time at coloradoui.gov and find the link for report fraud. Click on the one that they are the employer reporting identity theft and immediately report those claims in that space. But if you also remember, Charles, we've talked about the 50+ fraud holds that we have on claims here. This is why we've been a leader in this space compared to other states. A majority of those claims, by the time they are reported and confirmed as fraud, we have actually stopped payment on those or prevented payment from going out through those fraud holds. So again, the fraud holds stop payment, but until we can get ID.me up front, it's more difficult to be able to stop all that paperwork from going out at this point in time.
If I could jump in, Chair, a question from Wayne's a good one, and it's a natural for Alexis. I'll give the broad point and then I'll Alexis go more specifically. Unemployment insurance fraud is a type of fraud, just like a roofing contractor fraud is a type of fraud. That is a crime. Alexis, what are the exact penalties for that crime?
Thanks for the question. So the first thing is we would look at various theories of theft. We would look at the amount, and that would often dictate the level of charge from misdemeanor to felony. Identity theft generally is a class 4 felony. So we're talking upwards of 6 years unless there were priors. There are a number of ways that we could analyze the situation that could lead to different results. But ultimately, we would be looking likely at mid-level felonies depending on the size of the theft and the level of the fraud. If it were to be a case that was multi-jurisdictional and therefore remained with the Attorney General's office, then there would likely be a greater impact and more statutes that they could utilize in holding people accountable. So it's obviously very factual, and that's just the worst lawyer answer ever. But we'd be ranging from high-level misdemeanors likely to mid-level felonies.
And let me take it back just to note that that's sort of for the single act. If there was evidence that this was part of a criminal enterprise and a conspiracy, the Colorado Organized Crime Act could also come into play, and that would provide additional penalties and remedies. So we will absolutely be analyzing each one of these crimes, obviously from the basic fraud that it will present to even more complex crimes that may be warranted.
We do have, let's see, a number of folks from our criminal investigations unit on the phone. So feel free to chat in a response or add anything else if you feel it helps the conversation around penalties.
Hey, Phil or Daniel, can you take the question from Aldi in regards to prisoners filing claims in the unemployment system?
I'll let Phil take that one.
Thank you, Daniel. Aldi, I think when you look at this, it's not just prisoners that filed claims in California. Prisoners filed claims in Pennsylvania and were caught. Would we anticipate that we may find prisoners who have filed claims here? That's a high likelihood, right? This is something that has occurred in every state across the United States. The program, especially the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Act, created great opportunities for fraudsters who have been sitting on stolen data for years. And you had a program there that at that time wasn't even sending information to employers because there are no employers to double check against, which created tons of opportunity and was leveraged and utilized by criminals of various levels, whether they were sophisticated rings, group of prisoners, a couple of folks in a house that thought this is a way we can bring in some extra money. So it is likely that we've had prisoners that have also filed claims here.
Chair, if I can take Haley's question, which is a really good question also.
Great.
Haley, I appreciate you talking about this, which is what can people do to see if their data was used or if they're affected, rather than just wait around until it's a fraudulent claim. What I would point people to is, again, our identity theft repair kit. There are some measures you can do to protect your identity. Obviously, one big one is keep an eye, and this is something that Alexis talked about, on your credit report to see whether there's activity that isn't you. That's a clear sign that you are vulnerable, and you want to be proactively watching it so that you're not, in a sense, already endured a whole bunch of damage and then trying to repair it. You can be vigilant. Obviously, going forward, being very careful with what data you share with individuals is a very critical form of protection. A lot of people give up data too quickly that will then be used against them, either online, emails, robocalls, what have you. So this is a clarion call about what the dangers of identity theft look like. People who are directly a victim obviously are seeing that. All of us are at risk.
Thank you, Attorney General. Phil, and we'll get to everyone's questions. We're just kind of going through the list here, getting the easy ones. Phil, do you want to speak to Katie's question about staffing and how we're working through the volume of claims that are fraudulent that we've received?
Yeah, and Katie, I think this is a good reminder. We've gone over this the past couple of weeks too, related to employers and individuals continuing to receive forms and believing that that means we are paying on claims. Employers who received some automated decisions and believing that we were paying on unemployment insurance claims. Some of those were automated processes that have been turned off. Remember, as we have asked both individuals and employers, the most effective way for them to report that fraud is to go online again at coloradoui.gov and report it using our links for fraud. Reason for that is there's an automated process there that we were able to leverage once we moved out of our state legacy system and into MyUI Plus that allows us to place holds on those claims to prevent payments immediately by using that form. That doesn't require a KUSA backlog. We had the backlog prior to moving into MyUI Plus on being able to stop those claims. We had seen an uptick in activity in the legacy system the last few weeks of that system's life. And based on analysis and fraud analysis we had done, we had staff who were having to go in and manually update those to stop payment on those claims. And that was a 30,000 backlog at that point in time. Currently, there is no backlog that prevents us from stopping those claims, so long as individuals are effectively and efficiently reporting that fraud online on the forms that we have placed out there.
Sharon, can I take Wayne's other question that he had for me?
Please, thank you.
Wayne asked a question about cuts that we've received in our office and how that relates. I really appreciate it, Wayne, because it's a chance for me to celebrate the dedicated, hardworking public servants. We are doing more with less at the Attorney General's office. It is not a situation that I feel great about because people are being worked harder. We had almost 24% more complaints over the last year, 2020, than we did in the prior year because of the pandemic and frauds like the one we're talking about today. And we have less people because of budget cuts. The criminal coordination we're talking about today through our special prosecution unit also received cuts. So on both of these critical fronts, the consumer protection front and the criminal enforcement front, we're stepping up to this challenge fully because people are working harder and doing more with less. I look forward to when I'm able to provide some restored personnel so that we're not going to lose people because I will say the amount of hard work happening in my office to meet these challenges, it's extraordinary. It's what public service should look like. And that's how we're able to do this because people are working harder to do more with less. We're trying to work smarter, use technology when we can as well. But this is a challenge our team's rising to.
I wanted to circle back to Gabrielle's question, and I believe both Director Barella and Phil Spessart mentioned this. Within the last week, we actually added an employer-specific report fraud form to the website at coloradoui.gov. Certainly with a victim of fraud or an employer who suspects their employees are victims or receiving separation requests for employees who are still on payroll, the best immediate step and course of action is to report that to the department so that we can immediately close down those claims. The other thing that CDLE started within the last couple of weeks is when an initial claim is filed, we send a communication to the person who allegedly has filed the claim. That has served as an additional early indicator to us. When that person who is the victim of fraud receives that letter, they can then report that into the department. The other triggers in the past were receiving a Relia card or other communication from the department. So those are just a few of the things that somebody can do once they receive those communications from us, report it to us through the fraud form.
Just thought I'd point out, Cher, that many of you know I'm the victim of identity theft. I wrote a column about it. It was through the SBA and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and that too is very common.
Thanks, Wayne. I hope you got that all squared away.
Well, I just submitted my fraud report. It wasn't easy to figure out where you're supposed to do that, but I will soon post something, another addendum to that column about where people should do that because it's not very obvious.
Thanks, Wayne.
Sure. Let me address Charles' Ashby's question, which is a good one, which is what is the coordination with the Department of Justice, given that there is indeed an international and multi-state effort. As we identify those connections, we will work with the U.S. Department of Justice to trace and identify the broader criminal enterprises at work here. We're going to start with the local leads, and we will follow them where they lead. And when appropriate, we will work with the Department of Justice, who has indicated an interest in that collaboration as well. So this is an ongoing effort. We are still in progress in it, and these things do take time. So it may be a while before we're able to come back and give you a longer story as to what operations we've identified and what the charges are.
I think we missed Phil Speshart a question about a portal or the ability to fact check for consumers to see if they have potentially a fraudulent claim on file. As of now, no. So Phil or any of our unemployment experts have anything to add?
Yeah, we don't have that portal right now. I don't know if we would actually think about such a portal. Providing that information out there widely might actually compromise some of that information yet again. So we would be trying to be careful with that, not sharing any kind of PII or any information like that that might allow this to perpetuate and continue on. I think I'm going to go ahead and answer a question from Tamara here at the same time too, a little further down, talking about a victim reporting fraud, but they get a new Relia card or 1099 with a slightly different information. I would highly recommend that that individual go online and report that again online at the coloradoui.gov website to report fraud. You've also asking Tamara, have all victims now received confirmation from CDLE acknowledging their fraud report? This is going to depend on when they filed the fraud report. Again, as we mentioned earlier, we have continued to try to improve in our communication in this realm. Early on, we were trying to catch up and make sure we were keeping fraud from occurring. We were complacent and had not let parties know, yes, we have received your fraud report. We have taken care of this claim. So as those individuals continued to receive items related to that claim, they thought they needed to continue to report the fraud to us, which again, created or increases backlog, unfortunately. Now, when individuals use that website to report that fraud, they immediately are told that their report has been received. They're also informed that they may still receive documents related to the claim, but nonetheless, we have been able to take that report and close the claim down.
Thank you, Phil. Attorney General?
So I think that I'm ready to wrap up and maybe give Alexis a chance, because I know we're taking part of the real estate of your weekly check-in, and appreciate you letting us make this announcement here. Thank you, Joe. You've been a great partner on that. The final question is, why is it so important to tell people about it, and are some more at risk than others? And all I can say is everybody's at risk in all parts of our state. And the consequences, getting back to Wayne's point, of being a victim of identity theft can be severe. There are ways you can protect yourself. We've worked to get that message out there. We're going to keep working to get that message out there. And we're going to keep going after these scammers in the best ways we can, which is why we're one of the few states that have been able to put together this type of task force. That is a testament to our collaboration here in Colorado. And again, Alexis King, as I mentioned, there's district attorney in Jefferson County, Joe Barella, the folks in our Colorado Bureau of Investigations, all very much share that commitment. So maybe I'll give Alexis a final word before handing it back to Joe for the rest of the session.
Thanks so much, Phil. We really appreciate the ability to have teamwork. We have expertise on economic crime in our office, but really nurturing these cases on the day-to-day with the attorney generals, putting them together with the Department of Labor and Employment is essential to make sure that we have prosecutable cases and that we have accountability that our jurors can look at and consider when we try to address fraud both locally and statewide. So thanks for taking the time today, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, District Attorney King, Attorney General Weiser. We appreciate your partnership on this. I know we have a lot of work to do, but I think we can make a huge dent in how this is impacting Colorado. And so thank you for you and your team's participation in this.
Thank you all. I think as noted in the chat, anyone who wants to follow up Lawrence Pacheco from our office, he's been doing a great job getting this information out there and working with Jessica in the department. So thank you now.
Thanks. That will conclude this week's call. Thank you so much. Feel free to send follow-ups and have a great day. Thank you.
Sharon,
Take
Yes.
care, everyone.
I just asked if there were particular industries that have been targeted, or is it just across all industries?
I don't believe so, Wayne. It's so
Okay.
pervasive. You know, this
Okay.
is truly, I think, unfortunately, a number of us on this very call have been victims. So I
Yeah.
think it cuts across a variety of industries and sectors.
Yeah,
And
I was
Wayne, government sector as well as private sector has been hit equally as hard.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that too, Wayne, and say it hasn't mattered, right? Individuals who had their identity stolen in those other avenues, those claims are be filing. So it doesn't matter if it's been a small employer or a large employer either. It's just across the board. Those small employers may feel like it's more on them, strictly because it becomes a huger percentage of the paperwork that they're dealing with, but it is across the board.
Well, I know that in my particular case, it's taken several hours to resolve this over the course of several months. Of course, if you read the Bloomberg story, it's largely criminal gangs in Russia and Nigeria, which we'll never catch. Thanks.
Okay, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Be well, everyone.
Bye-bye.